Trading Time with your host, John Rousseau.
My guest today on Trading Time is a longtime friend. His name's Geoff Orr. This guy is such an amazing craftsman. The stuff I've seen him build over the years is incredible. We're going to do an overview of his career in building, his career in glazing. He has a fabulous glazing company in the South Okanagan, Orr Custom Glazing. Specializes in huge pieces of glass getting installed in buildings, and it's really spectacular to see. We're going to get into the importance of mentorship, the importance of making sure that we're training tradespeople. Geoff's been a mentor to many people over the years on various projects, and he is a good example of a good example. My friend Geoff Orr. Geoff, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for inviting me, John.
We've been friends since 2009.
Since you got stuck in my shower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was tile setting when we first met. You were building a castle up on the hill. That was our introduction. Fuego, as it's known.
Right.
A building built out of an old supermarket and more. Maybe we start there.
Right.
We can start there and we can jump ahead and we can jump back from that point, but I think that that's a nice datum.
Right.
Let's talk a bit about construction. Heavy timber. What do you know about heavy timber and joinery?
Well, I've learned a few things about that, John. And I mean, I guess my first heavy timber project, I built a queen size bed, actually. It was a double bunk bed that I built at our ski place. And it was, that was sort of my first time I'd ever really laid my hands on heavy timber. And I shaved down all the edges and put it all together. And it was pretty impactful for me. So my second major heavy timber project was Fuego, which, as you called it, a castle, but I think you need a lot more stone for a castle. I think it's really just imagined. So I really broke my teeth on that when I acquired a bunch of beams that were on the side of the road for sale. They were torn down from a super value store in Penticton. It was the building was 160 feet across, so there were two sets of beams, 83 feet each, that came up to the center, and it was a convex arch structure that had sort of pin footings on it and or pin connections on it. And the ends of the beams had gotten rotten because some water had ingressed, and so they condemned the building, tore it down, and there were all these beams on the side of the road for sale. And that sort of met up with me in that moment, because I had just purchased this property in Penticton up on the hill. I was living in a tent. I was trying to decide what I was going to do out there in the middle of nowhere, and I saw these beams on the side of the road for sale. So I went in and carved a deal, and I bought them for a song, and for all of $5,000. There were these 12 glue lam beams that were the start of the project. And so from there, I went and I started designing, and I designed about 4 different buildings for that spot before I finally could actually stomach going through with it, till I was comfortable with what I was going into, because I knew it was going to be massive and go on for a while. It went on for a lot longer than expected, but I sanded off a lot of wood, and I built a pretty cool structure, I think you could say. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was up there the other day. And all these years later, it is still such an impressive example of joinery, heavy timber joinery. There are so few buildings that are built in our culture that remain, well, that were relevant at all. You take a look at some of these examples of architecture and these developments that we're putting in there. It's just housing. It's not architecture.
Right.
But to have a building like what you've designed there and all of the unions between the land, the bedrock, coming out of the bedrock with these massive pieces of glulam and huge panels of glass, really spectacular. How did the design happen?
Well, I was not long out of architecture school. I'd spent some time on the North Shore in Vancouver, building houses with a contractor down there, and it was kind of my second career as well. So I had a little bit of capital that I could put toward this project, and I learned the thing by doing it myself and doing it with my own money and making my own mistakes and eating them, when it costs you personally, it makes a big difference. Anyways, so you're not trying to cut any corners. I developed a very strong eye for detail and quite often you have the ability to buy whatever product you want and put it into a place. But in this case, I kind of had the product and it was more of, what can I create using this? And I guess you could still take it a million different directions. I just wanted to create something unique, and I think ultimately my being a bit of a novice in construction at that point in my life, I wasn't constrained by the rules of the system, I would say. I kind of I didn't see the challenges as being obstacles. I just went the way that I naturally felt that it flowed, and the way that that worked. I lived on the land. I lived, as soon as I put the actual structure up, I moved into the building. Like I was living on the second floor, and there was rain coming in from the side, and I was like, I guess I gotta put a wall up there or something. It was. So I got to live on the land and feel all the aspects of it. So I got to feel the wind and the hail and the rain, and because I was there for a full winter before I had even started the project. Learning how to be tough. I had to grow out of my West Van roots and try to figure out what it was like to live in the country, and survive. So when I first moved there, I was like, I dug a trench, put in a septic field, I did all these things just so I had so I could sort of live out there. I guess I could have just done an outhouse, but I actually did build things that were going to be there for a while right away. Yeah. When
you look at it, it doesn't look like some buildings you look at and they look like they're from another planet and they're hard to look at.
Right.
This is not one of those buildings. This is like from another planet, and it's like you can't believe what you're looking at. You're like, this is incredible.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks, John.
Well, I know that you know that too, and you've had a lot of similar accolades from other people saying as much. It is such a massive collection of reclaimed material.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that when we were putting things together there, you were saying, and this beam came out of the Oliver High School, or this beam came out of the old folks home, or wherever else.
Yeah.
Like, you just collected a lot of material that had been destined for the chipper, essentially.
Well, yeah, pretty much. And what was interesting was, for me, because I'd sort of given up everything and just gone for this project, and I think maybe it made people excited, or I don't know how the word got out that I was doing it, because it was pretty remote location, but it seemed like every time I was, about to build the next sort of area, I had originally planned TGI floor system for the second floor or whatever. And then you know, that I was about to order all that material, and you know, I managed to grab all the beams from the Penticton Golf Club, and they came in quite cheap also. And so that made, you know, it made up all my floor beams. And then there was the Muriel Baxter High School. They tore down that gymnasium, and then that was all, you know, my stair treads and stringers and a bunch of other things. And it was just, every time I turned around, the world would conspire and help me to create this thing. And that's what's kind of neat about it.
Yeah, a true testament of when you put it out into the universe answers the call.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was true for people too.
Yeah, true for people too. There was, along the way, I brought in some what we call workawares, which were kids from Europe and other places that wanted to get some experience, just work experience. They would come and they'd volunteer, work for free. And I would teach them sort of everything I knew and what I was doing. Quite often they could hardly speak English, and we'd kind of get through some of that. And, but ultimately they would help out. They'd pitch in on some things. And it was just became a pretty special thing for me to be able to share my skills, as well as and then also really special for them to be able to go learn and try something new like this. So that was a pretty great experience for me too.
Yeah, I mean, would you say you've had 100 foreign workers over? I mean, there was a time there where you had them nonstop.
Yeah, maybe 50 different ones or something like that over the time. Yeah, it was funny because a lot of the things on the house they were fairly technical, and I couldn't always just leave it with somebody to do, and so we just kind of invented this idea of building these little cabins on the property with all the extra reclaimed materials that were laying around. So we just sort of, get up in the morning and, invent a cabin, and we'd just go build it. And so, I had like 5 or 6 or so of them at one time, and boom, we just work together and build a team and construct these places out of completely reclaimed materials that had basically zero cost. But we created some really, really unique stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. Those cabins are spectacular. To be completely unelectrified.
Right.
And you're like telling me like, yeah, and I'm renting them out in March and April. And I'm like, it's still winter up here at that time. You have people wanting to sleep in these remote locations. Right. They're so spectacular.
Right. And they're just really just wood and glass and a bed. And there's really, there's no power, there's no plumbing, there's no electricity, there's nothing going on except for that. And there's just a beautiful view, and the deer come up and pretty much lick the windows in the morning, It's just, you're out there. And I think so many people really just have never experienced that. And it's kind of, for me, it's actually giving people a taste of what it was like when I first moved there for the first few years, and I was just, I built a little cabana shed that was no bigger than these cabins. And although these cabins are way better sealed than that was, because the wind just went through, but I just had this, all reclaimed glass windows in the front, and I got to live there and just experience nature in the middle of nowhere. And people appreciate that, and they love it, and they love to disconnect, and they go for it. It's great. And for us, it's special for me to share my place and the creation, and people appreciate that too.
Spectacular location. I like what you said about how you wanted to give people the experience that you had when you first moved up there, because that is it's such a nice remote spot, dark, city view, lake view. Mm-hmm. It's an extreme location.
Yeah, it's not even easy. It's not even easy to get to either.
Nope.
So it's our success with it. It's been, it's been great. It's been inspiring for me for sure.
So one of the things that I'm trying to bring awareness to, a couple of different things from a provincial perspective. One of them that has been a really hot topic is the effects of the Airbnbs.
Oh, yeah.
On our people like to blame the affordability crisis on the fact that people are buying these units for short-term rental purposes and taking them out of the out of the housing supply, essentially, and just using them for tourist locations and accommodation. You had to go through quite an incredible amount of bureaucracy in order to bring these cabins up to compliance with the regional district. And after all of that, now they're talking about doing away with the ability for you to use these cabins as guest accommodation. Why don't you shed some light on that? Let's hear your perspective on this.
Well, you're really baiting me on this whole short-term rental thing, John. I'm going to take the bait on this one. So, yeah, I mean, looking back, I mean, when I built the cabins, I didn't really have a short-term rental idea in my mind at all. I built them just so that some of these foreigners could stay in them and volunteer when they came. And so it was just a crash pad out there for them to stay in. And then, once we did it, I was like, oh, geez, look at this Airbnb thing. Maybe we should just try this out. So we threw one up on Airbnb, and wouldn't you know, like before I woke up the next morning, the thing had booked, and I'm like, oh my God, like we got to finish these things. And so we jumped on these things, got them finished, and we rented them for $50 a night or whatever when we started, and that was fun. And so we ran them for a few years before the district got wise to it and came out and put big red signs on them that said, do not occupy, and $10,000 fines and all that sort of stuff, which what made that worse was that there were actually people staying in the cabins in that moment. So
that's
that
really
was
special.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So they were very happy about that. Anyway, so we got shut down, and it took me about 2 years to get them, because we had to get an engineer to come in after the fact, re-engineer these buildings, make some changes as required for the engineering, make them safer, jump through all the hoops and hurdles with respect to the septic fields and all that sort of stuff. So it took us a couple of years to get these things back up online. And then we did, and so that was fine. And then that's continued on until now, this short-term rental fiasco that's going on in the province. And, I'll tell you, the interesting thing there is that I for one don't believe that any of these sort of projects have any effect on the short-term rental market.
Yes.
Obviously we're creating beds that were never created anywhere else. You're dealing with Penticton, where there's just a lack of beds in the first place. But now our area director has decided to opt into the regulations. Well, that's interesting. Thank you very much. After they accepted my proposal and everything and let me be legal. So now actually I'm only allowed 1 unit next year instead of 3, which wouldn't seem that big a deal. However, this little thing happens to help us pay for my family. We're homeschooling our daughter, so we got a lot of activities and things we got to put her in. My wife doesn't have to work because she can run these 3 little cabins, and that just brings in just kind of enough income to keep things afloat and keep being able to pay for our kids' education, all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden you have something like this. Oh yeah, no, you're not allowed to do it because you're using our housing stock. Well, whose housing stock is this? There are no property rights in this country. They decided back in the 80s to not enshrine property rights in the Constitution. And that's why today we're seeing what we're seeing. You don't have any rights. You use the place, to rent it to try to make some kind of meager living. That's not a right of yours anymore. You're not allowed to do that. Mm-hmm. So I think it's atrocious. I think that, they've managed to get everybody behind it, but are they? I'm not really sure. I think what we're seeing now is an economic downfall that is coming as a result of all this stuff that they're doing.
Yes.
It's mind-boggling to me that they can just mess around with your livelihood on things that were completely legal and right 6 months ago are now illegal and can't be done because they've screwed up the system.
Yes, that's right.
That's really ultimately what's happened here. If you look back in the 80s, what happened was that my family used to be in commercial property, and my grandfather said, when he came home one day and just said, this isn't going to work anymore. He says, the Landlord Tenancy Act. He's like, why is anybody going to do it anymore? Why is anybody going to rent to these people? People used to buy buildings like big condos, and they used to rent it to, and they'd have 50 units in there or 10 units or whatever. The best thing you could do to survive would be own a 10-unit building, and you'd be able to rent it to all these people. Well, as soon as they put in the Landlord Tenancy Act and did all that sort of stuff, everyone said, well, maybe we don't want to do that anymore. So they took the buildings and then they sold them off as condos. So they took them out. They no longer were rental buildings. So that's why there are no more rental buildings. So that was the beginning of it. And that was a long time ago. And then this process has just continued on. So with eroding the rights of the landlords and making it impossible and infeasible to even be in the business. Because if now you're in a position where you can't get rid of somebody, why would I even think about renting it to somebody? I'm not going to rent it. I'm just going to sell it. I'm going to leave the country. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to take my money and I'm going to be gone. Yep. And that's what we're seeing now. Yeah, it is. And the greater effect that we're seeing there, it's going to hit every part of the economy. So I think we can expect to see that. So that was taking the bait, John. And but I think that allowing people to be able to do these sort of things that I've done could really be great for, it's great for the younger families, people who want to try to, get a little bit of side income in their life, or, you know what I mean? Like how else can you make money simply in life without having to hold down a job and work 9 to 5 or 7 to 10 or whatever it is, yes. Or 1 million hours to try to pay for the thing, if you can't have these sort of little businesses. And so the problem I see is that they're kind of just stopping you from what was one of the easier things for somebody to be able to do, to even if you're just renting a place out for a month while you go away, these sort of things, a lot of these things are just becoming so much more challenging that I have a definite bone to pick with this government.
Yeah. So they created the problem.
Right. And then they blamed it on us.
Then they blame it on the people that are being productive.
Right.
And creating a market. Because that's what you've done. Right?
Yeah.
You've created a market for yourself.
Exactly.
And as a result of that, you've been able to expand your family and expand your business and buy things, spend money into the economy. When these people show up to stay in these suites,
right?
What are they doing? They're not just staying there. They have wheelbarrows full of money that they're dumping into our economy, and we're saying we're putting the brakes on that.
I was out in the driveway this morning helping these two girls. These two girls were staying in this one cabin, and I was helping them carry all the cases of wine from inside the house and loading up their car like a Tetris machine, just trying to get these things in there because they'd bought so much wine to go home with.
Mm-hmm. That was just the wine they bought.
That was just
that
today.
Wasn't meals out, the clothes. That wasn't the money they spent with you.
Right. They're eating out. They're spending money in this town like crazy, and I think that's missing.
We're gonna feel that, man. These are really unintelligent political decisions, and just because we have a housing supply issue, which is a result of the fact that we have an availability of land issue, which was further exacerbated by too much zoning regulation, which is then further fueled by the fact that we haven't been supporting the trades for the last 30 years in our province or country.
Right.
And you're going to go after the guys with the Airbnbs? That's going to solve the problem? That big problem we just discovered?
Right.
Come on. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about that.
So our electrician, who's going to be a guest in the near future, he was running an $80,000+ a year rental. That's not income that's in his family anymore. Wife, same thing. Raising 2 beautiful kids. Ran the Airbnb.
Right.
Local government comes in here and says, yeah, you can't do that business anymore. You don't have a job anymore. So they sold their house. They're like, we can't do this here. Selling our house. Bye.
Right.
Is that the message you want to send to people? Like hardworking, value-adding people in your community? Because that's essentially what we're doing. We don't need you here.
Right.
These are the people that are building the houses that we need in order to meet this shortfall.
Uh-huh.
You know, you think, like, where do they think this money's going?
Right.
It's going into the housing market. It's paying our mortgages.
Absolutely.
Our overpriced mortgages that we have on ancient inventory. You know, like, how is that not a net benefit? That's terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see it everywhere. And I don't know, I guess the very wealthy people don't really care. They're just like, oh, well, we'll just pay whatever fees we have to. We'll just keep it for ourselves. They're not putting it back in the housing stock anyways. I suppose your electrician sold it, so somebody could have bought it and bought this housing stock. I mean, if we're trying to just create a massive housing implosion, then perhaps this is one way to do it. But to target one group and absolutely destroy them economically is, it's just pretty mind-blowing to me. Yeah, absolutely.
We've seen other examples of government do this in the last few years, shut vast sectors of the economy down and expect things to run the way they did. Mm-hmm. This is just another example of the idiocy of that. I don't know how this is going to play out. I don't like it, though. I don't like the sounds of it. And the other thing is, I don't, like you mentioned to your area director, like, how many people did you think they talked to about this? Did they talk to you about it? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Because it's very easy for them to go into their mapping of their region and just go, okay, well, how many of my constituents is this going to affect? Mm-hmm. Maybe I should reach out to 5 of them.
Right.
Hi, I'm your area director. We're thinking about adopting this policy, and it's not. I know. Oh, and they can say that they did that because they posted it on their website somewhere on the back page, right? Mm-hmm. And it's your responsibility to check in with them and tell them how you think. But like, the door-to-door aspect of policy making should have probably been implemented a little bit better here.
Yeah, I'm not sure how exactly. A few worried people that there might be a party next door has shut down an entire segment of the economy. Yeah. I mean, I realize that some people have had problems, but the reality is I've been running an Airbnb now for almost 10 years. I haven't had a single complaint from anybody. The thing just operates absolutely smoothly.
That's right.
And they shut you down anyways. I mean, it's...
Yeah, you're a good example of a good example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a sad state of affairs. Not sure what we're going to do about that. But hopefully a new government might change their mind on these things. I'm not sure what's going to happen next.
Yeah, that is a question I've asked myself, is like, at what point do things become so ridiculous that you end up running to be that chair?
Right.
That area director, you know? At what point are people so worked up about it, they're just like, we need some new directors in our municipality.
John,
right?
We're Canadians. We're much too nice. We don't actually stand up for ourselves. We just get run over by the government and run over by people all over the place. So I don't really, it's so Canadian to just, oh, okay, I'll just sell it and go do something else.
I'll just sell. It was his family's house. His dad built this house in the 90s.
Right, yeah.
He grew up in this house.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just sell the family house because now we can't afford to live there because they've shut our business down.
Right. I mean, I'm with you, John. I'd like to see people standing up. I'd like to see people, taking to the streets and trying to stand up for what we believe in. But we're dealing with a pretty divided, a fairly divided electorate. And I think that we're in a situation now that, this government has hired, hundreds of thousands of people who now have jobs, but everybody's working for the government now. So, I suppose they're buying those votes too, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
You know, that those people, I guess, are going to vote for their jobs, but you know, the people who are entrepreneurs, who are independent, who are, you know, just trying to survive, it just gets a lot harder for all those people.
Geoff, you started in Vancouver with a product which I think is interesting because I like to design chairs. And I found out that you're a chair designer too.
Oh, right.
You designed a product.
Yeah, it was called the Microsphere. And the Microsphere was a computer workstation that allowed you to basically adjust your chair. It had armrests that went up and down, and a neck rest and a leg rest, and you could get into whatever comfortable position you could, or whatever way you wanted to be able to work. And then all the computer peripherals were on like a post that would swivel into you in whatever position. So you could take the monitor up and down, and you could adjust these things. And by the way, you could adjust your monitor. It wasn't like today. You could adjust your 23-inch CRT screen, you know, that was 250 pounds on this thing, and be able to go up and down and move it around or throw it out of the way or whatever. So it was kind of it was a pretty interesting project that I partnered with 4 buddies, and you know, one of them was an engineer, another one was a pretty famous product designer, and then a tech guy, and another engineer, and we built all these little prototypes, and we launched this computer chair, if you will. And it was a pretty cool thing. We launched it at Comdex in Las Vegas, which is the biggest computer trade show in the world. The guy on CNN sitting in the thing saying how wonderful it was. Yeah. It was a really trippy time for us. We got a whole bunch of orders, and that was all pretty exciting. It was definitely one of the big learning curves in my career, as you know, bringing a product to market can be challenging. We had warranty claims, and now we got these products all over the country that have problems, and like that were you know, from the manufacturer, but who was responsible, and so on and so forth. So it was really, you know, I got my stripes in building a company back then. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the Microsphere.
So like a trading chair was
trading, computer gaming. It was the thing. It was like we were just at the advent of computers. Really, this was back in the 90s, and so you know, it was just obvious that all these people were suffering from, you know, carpal tunnel and all these other work-related problems from sitting in the computer 100% of their day all the time. And they needed an alternative to that. So that was why we launched the Microsphere.
Cool.
Yeah.
We've worked together a lot on a new product that we're launching, our tilt and turn and lift and slide door assemblies. You are an integral part of our glass design. You add a lot of value to our glass program. And the amount of glass work that you've done locally is prolific. I want to talk about the building that you did for F2A, our partners in construction. I want to talk about that ridiculous glazing assembly that you did for the Lieutenant Governor House.
Oh, that was a neat project.
Yeah.
The architects on that one gave me a call and just said, hey, you know, here's sort of what we think we want to do. You know, they wanted to connect these two buildings with a glass sort of breezeway over top of bedrock that was sloping sort of down this hill. And so I thought, well, okay, I mean, I've kind of, over the years, I've gotten a bit of a reputation for doing some of the stuff that's pretty far out there. And the further out there, my building design company was called Far Out Developments. So the further out there it was, the more likely and more excited I was to do it. I mean, I think the more boring it is, the more I'm definitely going to be charging, because I just don't even want to do the boring stuff, you know. So this job was just right up my alley. And but so we cut a slot down in the bedrock, and then we assembled a glulam structure building there, and then I glazed it basically straight into the rock. So it was sort of seamless. Like it just goes glass straight into rock. And
which is
there's
just
nothing
an
else.
unbelievable
There's no frame or anything.
That's
just
unbelievable.
Just like that. And that was pretty special. It's a pretty special little application. Yeah, it literally looked amazing.
Rock, glass
into the slot, and then we basically
structural silicone in between the two to keep water out.
Yeah, we structural siliconed it in there, and pretty great assembly actually. It came together really nicely. It's a very pretty house.
It's
I
spectacular.
gather they've won some awards and things for that too.
It's spectacular. Yeah, I mean the highest architectural award in the country was given to that building.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
So that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool to be involved in helping bring that one together.
Yeah, really cool building. Glass. Was learning how to work with glass as well as you have learned a product of the design of Fuego? You're drawing this building, you're like, I'm gonna have to learn how to.
Well, yeah, it was actually, and that's interesting too. When I started building the home, it was really my thesis in design, and I wanted to learn everything about building, period. And so at the beginning, I started working for an electrician. I started wiring houses for him. So I was building the house, but I was also working on the side too, all over the place. And so I worked for quite a while for an electrician. We'd wire houses or put in swimming pool wiring or whatever it was that he was doing, I would be involved in. And he helped me on my place, and so we worked together on that as well. So it was really a matter of trying to learn the trades. And I also started working for a glass company at that time, and that was sort of where I started first getting involved in glass. And then of course, as you can see from Fuego, the glass details there were pretty major, and I kind of took it from there myself. But I did learn a lot from this old guy Creighton that used to taught me a whole bunch of stuff. And basically from there, I learned to pile on that project. I started doing other glass jobs for other people too, as well as with him. And then and I ended up slowly, eventually just now, I just got completely into glass. When I built the house, I started to get asthma from all the sawdust and stuff that I was involved in. This was like a decade of sanding of all those glulam beams and stuff. And I think I did wear masks, but I was living in a dusty environment and things too. And so the nice thing about being in the glass business was really that, there was no sawdust involved, I kind of like that. It also played really well into my, just my eye for detail and for measuring and for that sort of thing. So and drafting as well, because there's a lot to do with that as well. So since then I've taken piles of courses, and Fuego was certainly my inspiration, because it's a giant beautiful glass structure, so it was certainly my inspiration.
Well, and as you were saying, when you're bankrolling the whole thing, you were talking about mistakes earlier, and when you're bankrolling things, you're keeping a close eye on it. Could you imagine how much it would have cost if you had to buy that out to a glazing company?
Oh yeah, that would have been
right. So then that becomes the driver to be like, well, I'm going to learn how to do this myself. I can do that.
Well, I suppose, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You look at it, you're like, I'm not going to hire somebody to do that. I'll just learn how to do that.
Yeah, if it were, it's not always that simple, really. But yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it was for us. That's why we got into the glass and door and window thing, was because the structures that we want to build, the single most expensive component in them are the doors and windows.
Right.
So if you have a shop that you can build them out of, if you have the ability to do it yourself, like what you did, you obviously do that, add the value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about a project that you and I discussed, just to shed a little bit more light on where we're at from an industry perspective. We're short on tradespeople. We're short on glazers.
Right. Right.
And as a result of that, we have like these super complex, high efficiency building envelopes that are being specified by architects and engineers in our changing building envelope environment, where everything has to be greener and greener every year and more energy efficient.
Yeah.
And we haven't kept up with the training aspect of this. And you were on a project, maybe you want to tell me about in Kelowna.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I was involved in a giant A-frame project up there that was pretty special, and the glass package in the thing was just monumental. I mean, it was just a huge install. I was brought in because I specialize in sort of the massive format stuff. So if you want to put in, if you wanted to put this thing in one piece, you'd probably call me up because I have all the equipment to be able to install that with a crane and be able to lift it in. I've got these vacuum lifting suction cup devices and whatnot to be able to do pretty heavy loads. And so they phoned me up and asked me if I'd come help on this project. And I went up there and I get there and the glazing crew on the site, like none of them spoke English. They were all Iranian. They were from Toronto, but some of them were fairly fresh off the boat, I think, too. But they were from Toronto. But the interesting thing was, like, this is a project in Kelowna, and when I talked to the architects about it, they said, the next best, closest bid was, like, just nowhere near these guys. And the bids they were getting for supply and install on this project was like over $1 million in glass. To do this project. And so these guys, they bought the stuff. The product came from Dubai.
Wow.
They bought the product from Dubai. The windows, the whole thing, the glass. Well, I think the glass came from Canada, but actually all the frames, all the openers, all that sort of stuff, everything came from Dubai. And then they brought the team to install them. They brought them from Toronto. And I'm just going like, how is that possible? Like, and I think you nailed it directly, John. Like, there just isn't the training that there should have been. I think that a lot of that is too many people who did arts degrees. Yeah. People just stuck them in university and they never actually learned how to do much. I mean, they learned how to think. This was the idea. This was the theory. You're going to go get an arts degree. You're going to learn how to think. Okay, that's fine. But there's definitely been a lack of training for skilled tradespeople. And now you got all the old guys who knew how to do stuff, who could sort all these sort of applications out, or they're all retiring. And they're just done. They've done it long enough. They're selling their business. They're out the door. So you don't have these guys as mentors anymore. You don't have these guys to talk to. You certainly can't find these guys to hire. So what have you got? You got super complex building envelopes that require super skilled people, and you've got nobody to do it because you got nobody to do it.
You got nobody to do it. That's right.
You got nobody to do it. So now you end up, it gets installed by some kid who's 23 that, shows up half lit in the morning and doesn't really know what he's doing and does an okay job. But, the failures on these things, they don't come out for a lot of years and you don't maybe see them on the surface, but it's the product quality on everything goes down. You have you have a hell of a time trying to manage people because you just don't have the skilled guys. You can't just let somebody go install this stuff by themselves.
Yes.
Somebody's got to be there looking over their shoulder all the time because they're unskilled.
These are details.
These are details that matter. The details matter. That's the reality.
I want to highlight something else that you brought up about, and we do this too often, and I think it has major consequences economically. You said that these clients spent a bunch of money, and they bought a product from Dubai.
How's that possible? Right?
So
Yeah.
you do business with Dubai, you say goodbye to your money, you never have the opportunity to earn any of those dollars back.
Right.
And we just lost a bid that if we were to win would have been very beneficial for our small business. And we lost it to not by a lot of money either. We were the lowest Canadian option on this window and door package, and we lost it to an Austrian company.
That's incredible, eh?
And you just think, you think to yourself, you're like, are these clients thinking about the future, of our country?
Right. Yeah.
You're just going to vacuum $500,000 out of our economy. And think of how many times that happens a day.
Oh, yeah. I'm involved in lots of projects that they're doing timber frame and things like that these days. And I'm really shocked at how many people, especially given the timber that we have here in this country. And I'm seeing all these guys show up with these container loads of timber from Europe. It's coming over here they're cutting and milling and doing all the work in Europe, and then they're putting it in a sea can, and then they're shipping it across here, and then we're going to assemble the building in British Columbia. How's that? I can't believe that's happening, but from what I understand, it's arriving here cheaper than they're getting it here. So how is that happening? Is it the wages are too high? Is that I don't know.
Geoff, in some instances, they send the raw material to these countries. I've talked to one of our scantling suppliers that supplies us with high quality scantling for our window and door assemblies. His number one client, Germany. He sends containers, 40-foot, 20-foot containers full of clear Douglas fir window scantling. They're able to buy it from us, machine it, send it back to us, and undercut us on our pricing. Tell me how that's good for Canada. Tell me how any of that's good for Canada. We should not be shipping raw materials to other countries so that they can add value to them, so that they can sell them to us. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be adding the value here.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that does is it might be painful at first, but what that's going to do is that's going to incentivize competition, which is going to drive prices down.
Okay, but John, in order for us to do that, we need to have employees. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't want to have employees. I'm in a position, I have a glass company, and I absolutely have such a problem with having good employees that it's, I'm very, very picky. I'd rather, for the most part, if I can do it by myself, I'll do it that way,
Yes.
Because you just can't, it's become so expensive to hire people because they don't show up. They have a million sick days. You have to hire at least 2 or 3 of them to do the one person's job. So we're dealing with a situation there, getting back to the economics of the situation, which is once again not the happiest environment or conversation for us to have. But this is ultimately where it's at. It's the same thing as, who wants to rent a place to somebody? Nobody wants to rent a place to somebody because they can't get rid of them. Yeah. Next thing you know, you've spent a year of trying to get somebody out of the place and end up finally turning off the power. Maybe they go out. The whole place is ramsacked. You're $150,000 in the hole. It's the same thing with the employees. It's so expensive and it's so difficult to deal with it.
Yeah. So,
what incentive is there for me to expand, to hire a bunch more people? When I'm at this point, I really try to keep it, keep the ship pretty light. I have a few guys that work for me that we can trust, but there's no incentive in this country to expand and try to grow. I don't believe.
There isn't, is there?
No.
No, especially when I was talking to a contemporary tradesman yesterday. He's like, how do you expand when the first 2 weeks of every month are just spent paying taxes?
Right. Yeah.
Paying taxes and other liabilities. Mm-hmm. It's like by the time I've paid my rent and all my other liabilities, I'm 2 weeks into the month.
Right.
One of those weeks is spent now like making some money. And then if I'm lucky and I don't get sick or injured, the last 5 days of the month, I'm trying to make a bit of profit, which if you do make any profit is going right back into the business, probably.
Right.
Since like none of these guys have like, a giant savings account.
Right.
Right? Like,
no.
So when you hear people, no, there's too much profit and capitalism and blah, 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 you're just like, well, where do you think profits go? They go back into our business.
Yeah.
Training employees. And that was another thing that he was talking about. It's the same thing, the employee thing, right?
Right.
Find somebody that knows something. They want to come to work for you. They're probably working for themselves, having the same struggles that you are.
Exactly.
Finding other competent people to work with them.
Right.
That's a real problem, man. And you alluded to earlier how we are also, not only are we in that problem, but we have the largest, most skilled demographic of humans that have ever existed retiring.
Right.
And shuttering their businesses because their kids don't want to take over the responsibility of their business. Mm-hmm. So now that product doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Classic example, Phil from Northern Fireplace. He's out, he's done. We can't go into his shop anymore and use his beautiful facility to cut any steel or do anything that we need to do anymore.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a problem.
Totally. So you just have to YouTube it, figure it out, try to do it yourself, John.
Is that where we're at?
Maybe that's where we're going. Everybody gets to just try to figure it out for themselves.
Back to that.
Right. But then there is no economy behind that. You're just kind of doing it for yourself. Nothing actually occurs in the economy. It just magically happens. So there's no taxes being paid there, except for some of the small materials you might buy.
Right.
But you're not paying anybody to do anything. So there's got to be some sort of, contraction effect behind that for the economy.
Well, Geoff, what do we do to combat that Dubai issue, that Austria issue? Mm-hmm. You can't blame Austria and Germany for having 150 mass timber facilities. You can't blame them for being the most technologically advanced mass timber manufacturers on the planet, right?
Right.
But you take a look at a company like Structurland, now Mercier Timber or whatever they are. Take a look at Kolesnikov in Castlegar and Nelson. Mm-hmm. Take a look at Spearhead, which is right down the road. Like, those are three examples, right? Structurecraft, another great example in our province. We should have 100 businesses like that.
Yeah.
Look at the size of the resource base that we have in comparison to Austria. Look at just the land mass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let alone all the trees that we have.
Right.
So then I look to the headlines. The conservative government, the federal conservatives, are looking at putting 100% tariff on imported electric cars from China.
Right.
100% tariff. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of where we're at now? Is like you start looking at tariff, you were in tariff territory?
Right, to try to protect our local economy.
The Liberals have just spent, what is it, $8.5 billion on a battery manufacturing plant to subsidize Volkswagen to come in here and build whatever they're building, and they're bringing in foreign workers to do that work. What? So, are we having that tariff conversation? I don't know. I mean, because otherwise, like, what are you going to have boutique businesses like ours?
Right.
If every time we spend 2 months putting a bid together, we lose to Austria?
Right.
Well, and it's going to get to the point where what you're talking about. So let's just follow this. So the engineers, architects, and project managers have decided that they're going to do business with Austria. They're going to buy the glue lambs there. They're going to buy the windows and doors there. It just shows up in a shipping container. How easy could that be?
Yeah, but what about when your window breaks and you got a problem, or you got to service the thing? Like, now who do you deal with?
Or you need somebody to install it.
Oh, right. Well, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you send a signal into the marketplace that we don't need craftsmen. We have craftsmen. They're in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sure. Well, you better bring them over here to erect the building too, because you're going to send a signal to those craftsmen that you don't need them, and then they're going to go do something else. And then your little designs that you have for these beautiful buildings, they're never going to get off the paper.
Right, because there's nobody here that can do it.
Because there's nobody to build them. So, I mean, this is not a... I heard something really interesting. Clients don't know what you don't show them. And I think if we want to protect our industry, we need to remember that. We need to stop showing clients these options and keep the money in our country as much as possible from a manufacturing perspective.
Yeah, fair enough. That's
and
so true.
that when you told me about that job, that really kind of turned that whole thing on. That was a great example of that,
Mm-hmm.
But what are you excited about, man?
Wow. I built some puppets last year.
Yeah, you did.
I'm pretty excited about puppets, actually. So many things that we build in this life, the details matter, we keep talking about that. The details matter, everything needs to be perfect and all this sort of stuff. But so I recruited some random people in Penticton, some really nice ladies actually joined up, and we put together a bunch of puppets for the Ignite the Arts Festival in Penticton, which is a arts festival they have in the wintertime. It's pretty cool. They have a dozen different venues, and there's music going in all of them for the entire week. It's like it's a pretty amazing show, and they have a parade at the beginning. And I'd been to the parade for a couple of years, but it was somewhat kind of, it was a very small town. The parade was, the first couple of years. It was cute, but I just thought, it'd be really cool if we could, amp it up and get some puppets going. And I'd never built a puppet before, but people in the room thought that was kind of a cool idea. So I was like, okay, well, let's do it. So then we started to get together and we came up with some crazy ideas. We built this big magpie, which was one of the mascots for the parade, and it was like 12 feet tall, and I rode it on a scooter through town. It was like it was a pretty flowy, cool thing. And then there was a coyote that Johan Wessels did. That was he's a local artist here. That was pretty epic. Also, we partnered up with the Rotary Center for the Arts in Kelowna, and because they had partially done a bear, and so we finished the bear for them, and it was like this 14-foot grizzly bear thing that ran around in the parade too, with these wobbly arms and things, and it was super cool. And you know what, that whole thing just like, it really gave me hope for society, and gave me hope for community and the future. And I don't know how we get our heads off of the economic problems and all these other problems, but if we all just build some more puppets, we'll probably be better off. You know,
I want to speak to that because, you know, I wore the coyote for the parade.
Yeah.
And we brought our daughters.
Yeah.
And they were so excited to be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it really ignited in me the need to do a proper puppet competition with you. So next year we're going to be competing against you in the Puppet Olympics.
Oh, really?
And we will be fabricating our own puppets, and we'll let the people decide. Okay?
Okay.
Whose puppets have what it takes. I just
funny.
thought it was really cool. I thought it was just such a neat. That's a cool thing to do with your kids.
Right.
To spend that much time crafting something intricate, structural, beautiful.
Right.
To share that with the community. I'm excited to do that this year.
Cool.
I'm really excited. And you guys did such a beautiful job of that. I was lucky to be a part of that in a limited capacity, but I agree with you, man. We need to do more of that because it's sends the signal to the community that you're not going anywhere and you're important.
Yeah.
The arts aren't going anywhere. You know what I mean? Like to see that many people out doing that was important.
Absolutely.
That was really cool. Any other messages you want to send out there? I mean, Geoff, you've been, you are the guy that I go to with all of my stupid ideas. You're
Right.
You're on the call list, and you have been ever since we met. What did you say to me the other day? You said, "Well, that's a stupid idea," and then what was it? I think it was like,
Come on, I didn't say that.
No, it
did
was
I?
like, well, that's a stupid idea. You could better rethink that. And then it was like, and then I was like, because I know there's just so many, we've done this so many times. I just like, okay, yeah, all right, that's no problem. I can recover from that. And then like, I think it was about 2.5 minutes later, I told you the next idea, and you're like, oh, that is such a brilliant idea. You're like, that is the best idea you've ever had. And then later in the day, you were thinking about it, and you texted me, and you're like, "Oh, can you do this idea in this color?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is a good idea. I got him." And so, you know, so I think like you've had a huge influence on me over the years, and I think about the influence that you've had with a lot of other people that we've worked with. Mike Apolsky, my main carpenter, working out in Naramata. You guys are super close, and the work that you've done together, and then I think all the workawares that you've influenced over the years as well, and people you've taught. Mentorship, man.
Right.
Incredibly important. Really important. And giving people the space to giving people the workshop to do something in.
Right. Yeah.
Like you've given a lot of people an opportunity to work with their hands, and that's awesome. You're awesome.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks for having me out here today.
Yeah,
Appreciate
man.
it.
Yeah, keep it up.
And it's great to rap about the whole situation.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Geoff.
Cheers.
Cheers, man.